We keep telling ourselves that massive success requires massive action, right? We look at the people crushing it, the best-selling authors, Olympic athletes, the CEOs running billion-dollar companies, and we assume they made some radical, earth-shattering leap that shot them to the top. We tell ourselves, if I want to change my life, I need to overhaul everything overnight. Wake up at 4 a.m., run 10 miles, write the whole book today. But this narrative, it's not just wrong, it's dangerous. It sets us up to fail because it ignores the fundamental truth about how humans actually work. We don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems. Let me tell you about Trent. 20 years ago, this guy was sitting at a desk in some quiet suburb, staring at a phone that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. He was a rookie stockbroker. He was failing, and he was terrified. The gap between where he was and where he wanted to be, it felt impossible to cross. No network, no reputation, and honestly, not much hope. Every morning, he'd look at the mounting pressure to perform, and the anxiety would just freeze him in place. But one Tuesday morning, Trent decided to stop focusing on the outcome. He stopped obsessing over the millions he wanted to make or the big career he wanted to build. Instead, he walked into his office with 2 simple glass jars and a box of regular paper clips. He put the jars on his desk, filled one with 120 paper clips, left the other one empty, and then he set a rule. A rule so simple, it almost seems stupid. I will not check my email, I will not get coffee, and I will not look at the clock until I have moved every single paperclip from the full jar to the empty one. One call, one paperclip. That's it. It wasn't about the sale. It wasn't about the rejection on the other end of the line. It was just about moving the steel. Click, move. Click, move. What Trent stumbled on that day wasn't just some productivity hack. It was the physics of progress. He discovered that the most powerful changes don't come from motivation, which disappears the second things get hard, but from habits, which are reliable. And that simple mechanical action didn't just change his career, it fundamentally rewired who he was. The biggest mistake we make when looking at our own progress is thinking results should be linear. We believe if we put in 1 hour of work today, we should see 1 hour's worth of results tomorrow. We expect this direct 1-to-1 ratio, but that's not how success works, and it's definitely not how the human mind processes effort. When Trent was sitting at that desk staring at the phone, he was trapped in what I call the plateau of latent potential. This is that agonizing period where you're putting in the effort, you're building the foundation, you're learning, and the external world is giving you absolutely zero feedback. It's the valley of disappointment, where the gap between what you expect to happen and what's actually happening is at its widest. And it's in this valley that most people quit. Trent wasn't failing because he lacked skill. He was failing because his potential was stored energy, not kinetic energy. He was suffering from paralysis by analysis. When you're standing at the bottom of a mountain looking up at the peak, the sheer height of it is overwhelming. Trent wasn't just thinking about making one phone call, he was thinking about the thousands of calls required to save his job, the humiliation of getting fired, and the massive gap between his current reality and who he wanted to be. This is the heavy cognitive load that destroys consistency. When you obsess over the outcome, the big win, the survival of your career, you introduce massive amounts of friction to just getting started. Every time Trent reached for the phone, he wasn't just lifting a receiver, he was trying to lift the weight of his entire future. We think the people who fail are the ones who don't want it enough, but often it's the exact opposite. It's the people who care too much about the result who freeze. They're so fixated on the finish line that they trip over the starting blocks. Trent had the capacity to be great, but capacity is useless without a delivery mechanism. He was trying to power his day through sheer willpower, but willpower is a finite resource. It's like a battery. It drains with every decision you make, every worry you entertain, every moment you hesitate. By noon, his battery was dead, and he hadn't actually done the work. He was caught in a cycle of motion instead of action, planning, worrying, preparing, but not actually making the calls. He wasn't casting votes for the type of person he wanted to become. He was stuck waiting for some breakthrough moment to save him, not realizing that breakthroughs aren't singular events. They're the lagging measure of habits that have been executed while you were invisible. Here's the fundamental problem with knowledge work and with almost any long-term goal. It's completely abstract. If you're a bricklayer, you can see the wall getting higher with every hour you work. You have immediate, undeniable visual proof of your effort. But for Trent, and for most of us, progress is invisible. You can spend 8 hours making sales calls and have nothing to show for it but a list of rejections and a tired voice. When the brain can't see progress, it stops releasing dopamine, which is the chemical driver of motivation. This is where the paperclips stopped being office supplies and became a psychological anchor. Trent took this nebulous, anxiety-inducing task and gave it physical form. He created a visual cue that was impossible to ignore. This is crucial because you know what? The most common trigger for a bad habit is a specific visual cue in your environment. But we rarely set up visual cues for good habits on purpose. By putting those jars right in front of his face, he engineered his environment so the correct choice was the obvious choice. He took decision-making out of the equation. Most people wake up and ask themselves, do I feel like working today? Or how many calls should I make? Trent didn't have to ask those questions. The full jar was the command. The environment was making the decision for him. This bypasses willpower entirely. Willpower is necessary when you're trying to force yourself to do something you don't want to do. But when the cue is staring you in the face, the action becomes a reflex rather than a choice. And here's the other piece. This system used the concept of making it satisfying. In human behavior, we repeat what's immediately rewarding. In the modern world, the reward for hard work is often delayed by weeks or months. You get the paycheck later, you get the promotion next year. But moving the paperclip, that provided a tiny, immediate sense of satisfaction, a micro win. He could physically see the work moving from to-do to done, and that visual tracking gave him a sense of momentum that abstract goals can never replicate. He wasn't trying to finish the race, he was just trying to empty the jar. And that shift in focus from the long-term outcome to the immediate, tangible task changed the chemistry of his daily routine. It turned a professional chore into a mechanical game that he could actually win. The final piece was the rigidity of the protocol. Trent didn't say he would try his best to make the calls. He didn't set some vague intention to work hard, because vague goals create vague results. He established a binary condition for his day. The jar is empty, or it is not. This is what we call a forcing function. By creating a rule that he couldn't leave his desk until the mechanical action was complete, he removed the option to negotiate with himself. Amateurs negotiate with how they feel. They let their fatigue or their mood dictate their output. Professionals stick to the schedule, and Trent's paperclips became the schedule. This mechanical approach strips the emotion out of the work. When you rely on passion, you're at the mercy of your feelings, which are turbulent and unreliable. But when you rely on a mechanical system, you leverage the power of consistency. The brilliance of this strategy lies in how it accumulates evidence for a new identity. Every time Trent moved a paperclip, he wasn't just making a phone call, he was casting a vote for the type of person he wanted to become. We talk about faking it until you make it, but that implies you're tricking yourself. The paperclip strategy is the opposite. It's proving it until you become it. You can't deny the physical reality of the empty jar. With every click of the metal, he was proving to himself that he was disciplined, that he was consistent, that he was a top performer. Over time, this repetitive action reshapes your self-image. You stop questioning whether you're capable of doing the work because the evidence is sitting right there on your desk. The goal isn't to achieve a result once, it's to create a system that makes the result inevitable. The mechanical action becomes a ritual, and the ritual becomes the anchor that holds you steady when the rest of your life is in chaos. By focusing on the repetition rather than the result, Trent unlocked the compound interest of self-improvement. Small, seemingly insignificant actions, when repeated consistently over time, accumulate to produce a transformation that looks like an overnight success, but is actually the sum of thousands of tiny mechanical choices.